I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about Germany. And they just had elections. Let's see, they had elections in Saxony and Brandenburg. And these parliamentary elections actually delivered some surprising results. To me, the shocker of it all, maybe it's not that much of a shock, is that the AfD has surged. Now, the interesting part is that they didn't take first place, but they ended up a strong second. And some of the polling numbers, if you compare from the last elections to today, I mean, AfD has increased by 10 to 15 points plus. It's quite incredible. And I think it just shows what we've been saying for a long time, that Angela Merkel, the CDU, the SPD, it's decaying. Is it not, Alexander? I mean, it's crumbling, and the AfD is surging, and also the Greens did very well as well.
Yes. Well, can I say, first of all, Alex, that I completely agree with you. I think your analysis is spot on. And I am also very frustrated when I go onto the mainstream media and I read completely misleading articles, as I see them, about these elections, to the effect that the AfD supposedly didn't do as well as might have been expected. Now, that is, to say that because there was a torrential downpour that is somehow slightly less powerful than a hurricane. I mean, this is a complete misrepresentation of these results. Now, can I just make two observations about these two places where there were elections in Germany? Now, these are Länder. These are two Länder, Brandenburg and Saxony. Länder are the entities, the regional states that make up the Federal Republic, which is Germany. Germany is a very decentralized federal country, and the governments of these Länder, as they're called, these regional governments, are very powerful and play a big role in German economic and political and social life. And Germans, by the way, also tend to have a very, very strong attachment to their Länder, which derive from the old German states, which once upon a time, before 1870, many of them were independent states. Now, Brandenburg and Saxony are both in East Germany. They are both the two heartland areas of the former communist East German Democratic Republic, the DDR. And they were, in other words, on the other side of the wall. Brandenburg is the area that surrounds Berlin. It is the heartland of the old Kingdom of Prussia. What most people perhaps don't realize or know about Brandenburg is that it has historically, throughout its history, including in the Weimar period, been the heartland of the German left. Brandenburg has always been a solidly left-wing area. Saxony, which is in the south of what was the former East Germany, contains the two very, very important cities of Leipzig and Dresden. And it's one of the most culturally wealthy regions of Germany, and it contains these two important cities. Now, what these elections have shown, first of all, is exactly what you said. The two establishment parties, the CDU has historically, that's Angela Merkel's party. It's important to remember Angela Merkel is herself East German. She's from East Germany. The CDU is the dominant party in Saxony, which has historically been more conservative. The SPD, which is the Socialist Democratic Party of Germany, is the dominant party of Brandenburg, which is historically, as I said, always been left-wing. The CDU, Angela Merkel's party, and the SPD together form the governing grand coalition in Berlin. And you're absolutely right in saying that the challenge from the AfD in both these regions, both in Saxony and in Brandenburg, has been extremely strong. And in, I think, Brandenburg, the SPD lost 6% of its support. It went down 6% in the in its rating, and it's now down to just 22% of the vote. In 27% of the vote, sorry. In Saxony, the CDU, that's Angela Merkel's party, went down by 5%, and it's now at just 32% of the vote. They are only clinging on in Brandenburg and Saxony because they are in coalition with other parties which are hostile to the AfD. Now, in Brandenburg, the SPD is in coalition with the Linkspartei, which is the old East German Communist Party in a new form, which gets around 11% of the vote in Brandenburg. As I said, this is a very left-wing area. In Saxony, the CDU is, I believe, in coalition with various other parties, and is able to survive. Has been able to survive by itself because it's been the dominant party there. Now, what these elections mean is that in Saxony, the CDU will only be able to remain in power with the support of the SPD and the Greens. And the same, as I understand it, is going to be true in Brandenburg, where the SPD will only be able to remain in power with the support of the Greens. So what we are seeing is support for the two major parties in Germany, the CDU and the SPD, the two parties which have dominated German politics since the end of the Second World War. Support for these parties is steadily ebbing away. We see the rise of the AfD, especially in the East German Länder. It won more than 20% of the vote, 27% of the vote in Saxony, 22% of the vote in Brandenburg, in both of these two regions. It is the second biggest party now in both of these two regions, which is quite remarkable. And this in advance of a deteriorating economic situation where many people expect that Germany will be in recession next year. So what is clearly happening is that support for the establishment parties is draining away. Support for the insurrectionary parties, the AfD in this case, to a certain extent also the Linkspartei, the former East German Communist Party, to some extent also the Greens, is rising, and this before a recession, an economic recession, which is likely to drive voters even further away from Angela Merkel's coalition towards the opposition parties on the left and the right, first and foremost the AfD.
Yeah, Angela Merkel, the CDU, and the SPD are really screwed because this is also after the height of the migrant crisis for Germany, which I think was 2015, 16, where they had a million migrants come in. So this while the migrant crisis plays a certain role here, now you're entering the recession.
Yes.
And it looks like things are not going to be looking, up for Merkel or for Germany, especially with the US-China trade war, which is affecting Germany a whole lot. So, go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important point because I was in Germany, as we all know, very recently. I was not in the Eastern Länder, where they have a different politics beats to a different drum. I was in Rhineland-Pfalz, which is about as West German as you can come. And what really struck me in Rhineland-Pfalz, which is the area which includes cities like Mainz, cities like Trier,
cities like Worms, it's on the Rhine, is that there, everybody who was concerned about economics, and lots of people, Germans are very, could care about these things. The thing that they're really worried about is negative interest rates and the monetary policies of the European Central Bank. And you hear this constant drumbeat of complaints from people in Rhineland-Pfalz that the economy is not being properly managed because West Germany isn't saving, and that's affecting investment and is creating malinvestments in the German economy and is preparing the way for a very severe recession. So in West Germany, and Rhineland-Pfalz, as I said, is the economic heart of West Germany in many ways. In West Germany, it's the economy that really, really concerns people. In Eastern Germany, in the Eastern German Länder, I suspect it is both and increasingly the economy, but I think the migrant crisis has also continues to have a very big impact there indeed. So it's both in East Germany, it's more the economy, I think, in West Germany. But however you spin the figures, the facts for Merkel and for her Grand Coalition are very bad.
Yeah, let me read you two excerpts from RT that is covering this story, Alexander. And they put the numbers into an interesting perspective, especially when looking at 2014 to today. And let me read you these two paragraphs. Saxony has been ruled by CDU prime ministers since the 1990s and is considered by some as the party's spiritual home. However, the CDU saw its support drop to 32% on Sunday, down 7.4 points since the last election in 2014, according to an exit poll by German broadcaster ARD. While the party remains the largest in the state, the right-wing Alternative for Germany, AfD, came a close second, taking 27.5% of the vote on Sunday, up from 9.7% in 2014. Brandenburg encircles Berlin and has been ruled by the SPD since German reunification in 1990. The AfD's hopes of surrounding the German capital were dashed on Sunday, but not by a wide margin. The SPD won 27.5% of the vote, ahead of the AfD's 22.5%. In 2014, the AfD only managed to score 12.2%, while the Socialists took just under 32%. Alexander, what a rise by the AfD since 2014. It's a surge.
It's a huge surge. I mean, it's a doubling of support in Saxony. It's more than doubled. I mean, it's hugely increased. And I think people need to stop being in denial about this. I'm talking about analysts and commentators around the world. As I said, the AfD is banging on the doors of power in the East German Länder. And there is also growing disaffection for somewhat different reasons in West Germany also. Preserving this coalition in Berlin, this grand coalition between Angela Merkel and the SPD, is draining support from the two main parties away. And can I just say something? I mean, it isn't just that the AfD is rising. It's rising for a reason. The reason is that people in Germany, East and West, sense that the German government, Angela Merkel's government, is exhausted and it isn't responding to the growing problems that Germany faces. Germany has had this model for a very, very long time of prioritizing exports of its manufacturing industries. It has kept down costs, partly, it must be said, by holding down wages. What is now happening is that with growing problems in the world economy, with China especially slowing down, with tariffs
growing all over the world, with the driving energy for that coming from the United States. That model of exporting your way to success is starting to break down. It isn't working for Germany anymore. And trying to keep this thing going by keeping interest rates in negative territory is weakening the underlying fabric, not just of the German economy, but of German society also. And what Germans in East and West are seeing is that there is a government in Berlin that has no answers to these problems. It just survives from day to day. So in Saxony and in Brandenburg, Saxony, the spiritual home of the CDU, Brandenburg, as I said, the heartland area of the left and of the SPD. The CDU and the SPD are clinging on by their nails. They're just clinging on. This is not a success. This is a disaster. They should be winning convincingly in these places if they had the support of the German people, and the German people had confidence in their government and what their government is doing. So treating these results as a reason for preserving the grand coalition, which is what some people are doing. I already read an article to that effect in the Financial Times. Is exactly the way to misread them. As you said, this is a huge surge by the AfD, and people need to understand that.
It seems that the German people are really waking up to the fact that their Chancellor, Angela Merkel, is probably going to go down as one of the worst chancellors in German history, at least my opinion. I mean, she's been a disaster, not only for Germany, and I think it's starting to show now, she's been a disaster for the entire European Union. And she's gutted, you know, the export market of the EU as well. And now you have the UK leaving the EU. That's under her tenure and under her rule. Alexander, what needs to happen in Germany so that they can pull themselves out of this crisis and out of this recession? You mentioned the negative interest rates. Can you go into that a little bit and explain why that is a milestone around Germany's neck, and maybe get into what needs to be done so that Germany can start, you know, getting its engine moving? Because it is the engine of Europe.
Absolutely it is. It is absolutely the engine of Europe. And can I just say something? This is what was very unusual about my recent trip to Germany, is that instead of my asking questions, you know, one comes along with talks and one says, you know, how are things getting on here in Germany? People were coming and volunteering to me for the first time that they have these concerns. There was an old lady I know who runs a very fine restaurant, and she was complaining about negative interest rates. For example, there was, and this sort of thing I've never experienced it like that in Germany before. I mean, there've been hard times, but I've never got the sense in Germany that there is so much economic malaise. Now, what needs to happen?
And explain that negative interest rates a little. Yeah. I mean, what exactly is it?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Negative interest rates are this situation which is arising increasingly across the Western world, where governments issue bonds. Bonds are loans to the government. You know, you buy a bond, you buy, in effect, you're lending to the government. You buy what's called a bond, and a bond is a kind of contract or a deal which you have with that government, and they will pay you a certain amount of interest, and they will, you know, in 5, 10, 20, 100 years, they'll pay you back the capital as well. What is now happening is that governments like the German government are issuing bonds at negative interest rates, so that instead of, when you buy a bond of that nature, when you're lending your money to the government, instead of the government paying you interest, you are paying interest to the government. Now, the reason that, that's crazy. That is an extraordinary state of affairs, and it's now starting to extend beyond government bonds
To the banks.
to the banks. What you're getting is bizarre situations like what's happening with the bank in Denmark, for example, where people go to get a mortgage from this bank, and instead of paying interest to the bank on that mortgage, the bank pays them interest on that mortgage. Now, this is upside down. This is crazy world. But that may sound like it's good news for borrowers, but it is terrible news for savers. And of course, the German economy has always, to a very great extent, relied upon savings. People are not able to save because if they put their money in a bank, what is in effect happening is that instead of them getting interest on the money they put in the bank, remember, if you put money in a bank, you are lending money to the bank. Instead of being paid interest on that, you are now paying the bank.
I see it in Greece and Cyprus all the time. You pay the bank money for you to lend them money. You're paying them.
Exactly.
You're paying them to hold your money. That's what's happening.
Exactly.
It's as simple as I can put it. You pay them to hold your money.
Exactly. So in effect, people's savings are being confiscated. Because that's what it amounts to. Now, this is creating a very, very unstable situation. And the reason it's arising, incidentally, is because there is so much debt. There is so much government debt. There is so much corporate debt out there that central banks have been printing money. They've been flooding the world economy with money. Because that money doesn't trickle down in the form of higher wages, because there are steps being taken to keep wages low in order to keep inflation low. What is happening is that the financial system is in effect becoming waterlogged. And that's a symptom of this growing malaise. Now, what needs to happen in Germany? Any government in Germany today has to be based around the CDU. It is the dominant party in Germany. There has to be a change of chancellor, and there has to be a fundamental change of economic direction. A number of things need to be done. Firstly, Germany needs to stop this extremely misguided policy that it's been pursuing over all this time of pursuing this conflict with Russia, which is what Angela Merkel did when she imposed sanctions on Russia. Everybody can see that this is wreaking great havoc on Germany's business interests. But the other thing they need to start doing, and this is what's going to be incredibly difficult, is they need to start rethinking the euro, because the euro is the key to this problem. Whilst the euro remains in place, Germany cannot manage its monetary policy in its own interests. The European Central Bank will continue to issue money at these enormous rates, keeping interest rates in negative territory in order to support countries and banks that are heavily in debt in places like Italy, Spain, Greece, wherever, in order to sustain the euro.
Deutsche Bank?
Deutsche Bank too. What needs to happen is that the euro needs to be broken up. There needs to be liquidation of these debts. That means liquidation of some of these banks that are frankly insolvent. Europe has far too many insolvent banks, Deutsche Bank being one of them. Let's be clear about this. Deutsche Bank is technically insolvent. And all of these countries, Greece, Italy, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, all the rest, they need to undertake a proper restructuring. I read an article by Ambrose Evans Pritchard in which he said that Italy needs to have at least a third of its debt written off if it is to have any possibility of achieving growth. I think with Greece, it's going to be much more than that. So that's what a new chancellor in Germany, a new government in Germany has to do. The trouble is, with Angela Merkel there, none of that is going to happen. And looking at the political leaders in the SPD and the CDU, who could potentially take over from her, none of them are going to make these changes either. So the result is that there will be a recession. And beyond the recession, the problems are just going to go on getting bigger. And parties like the AfD, like the Linkspartei, will go on over time getting stronger. Now, there is another point I wanted to just make about these two elections. It's very striking that if you put together the votes of the AfD, which is, as I said, an insurgent party in East Germany, across Germany, in fact, and the Linkspartei, which is, as I said, the old East German Communist Party, which retains a certain measure of support in Eastern Germany. These two parties, the Linkspartei and the AfD, together, both in Brandenburg and in Saxony, have scored many more votes than the SPD did in Brandenburg and the CDU did in Saxony. And so already you are seeing that anti-establishment parties are outpolling the establishment parties in these places. The only thing that enables the SPD and the CDU to hold on is that the left, the Linkspartei is very left and cannot contemplate ever going into coalition with the AfD, which is very right. But there is, in effect, both in Brandenburg and in Saxony, a repudiation of the mainstream. And with a recession in Germany, that is bound to get worse.
Okay, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And remember, you can get an audio copy of this video. Follow us on iTunes and Soundcloud. The link is in the description box down below. And to help this channel out, please donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. The links are also in the description box as well. Your donations help keep us going. And visit the Duran shop. Pick up a t-shirt, pick up a mug. We've got ebooks as well. What else do we have? I think you have on that desk, Alexander, a mug. Which magic mug? Which magic mug do you have? Original magic mugs.
Original magic mugs. Well, actually, I've been drinking a lot from this one. It's been a cooler day today, so I'm back to my Queen Anne tea, and I've been drinking it from this mug, or 15-ounce beautiful porcelain mug, really elegant, excellent mug. As you said, Alex, this is the real deal. We're starting to get imitators, a sign, by the way, of our success, imitation being the highest form of flattery. It shows you how good our mugs are. They really are exceptional. But this is the real thing. Any copy you get from anyone else is, as we know, we are informed about this, highly inferior. This is an excellent mug. It's got the badge of the Russian Federation of it. The reason is because that's the badge that we saw on a mug that Vladimir Putin was drinking from. Can I say this is a mug, the kind of mug that Vladimir Putin would be proud to drink from, because it is of such high quality with the badge of his country on it. Any other mug that you get elsewhere, similar to this, from other people copying us, is not going to be anywhere near as good. And we have lots of these mugs, and they are fantastic. The feedback we get is phenomenal. And of course, we don't just sell mugs, we sell shirts like this. This is a marvelous T-shirt, long sleeve T-shirt. It's been a cooler day here in London, very bright but rather cool, and it's the perfect shirt for a day like this. I went out with my dogs to Hampstead Heath, and I was wearing the shirt, getting all the admiring glances when I do, because it's a wonderful shirt to wear both in smart casual situations and when you're walking out of doors with your dogs. So we have lots of other great shirts. We have polo neck shirts, we have short sleeved T-shirts, we also have hats, we have stickers, we have hoodies, we have all sorts of wonderful things. And can I say again, these shirts are the real thing. They are very high quality, 100% cotton. You viewers will have seen me in the shirt many times and will have noticed how stable the dye is. I mean, you get cheap shirts, often things can go very wrong with the dye. This is in perfect condition. It's been worn a lot now, and it looks marvelous, and it fits marvelously. And of course, it's got our own double-headed eagle there, which is the double-headed eagle of the Duran, not of the Russian Empire or of the Byzantine Empire or of the Tsar or of Mr. Putin. It points to the fact that we look to the East and the West. And as you rightly say, Alex, you've also got books by the Duran, which you can buy from our shop. We're going to do eventually, I'm pretty sure, more books soon. We've done 2 books on Russiagate. Very fine books. Everything we said in those books is coming true. If you've been following our videos, you understand how well we've understood the question of Russiagate, and our books will enlighten you. We've done an equally fine book on Brexit, and I think we might, before very long, perhaps do a sequel on Brexit, because lots of things have been happening since then. But, you know, we're thinking that we're always discussing, Alex and I, what further books we could do. So we got books, we got all sorts of wonderful things. Help the Duran, help yourself, go to our shop. Alex will tell you how to do it.
TheDuran.com. The link is in the description box down below. Your purchase helps keep this channel moving forward. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Till next time, everybody, take care.